Ciao a tutti quanti, benvenuti e ben ritrovati qui su WyrdTV. Io sono Elvis, il presentatore ufficiale che vi dà il benvenuto qui sul nostro canale YouTube. Quest'oggi siamo qui per un'intervista molto bella, ma prima di presentarvi il nostro ospite passo il testimone a Betta.
Grazie Elvis. Allora, buonasera a tutti per l'ennesima volta, ci ritroviamo, siamo felici. Questa sera parleremo con un importante esponente di Freeligan ed è infatti un game designer molto famoso perché si è occupato del design di Tales from the Loop. Diamo il benvenuto a Nils Hintze. Hi Nils! Hey
Hi.
Nils!
Hello.
Hey.
Hey. Thanks.
Welcome.
Very nice to be here.
Allora, Nils, raccontaci un po' chi è Nils Hintze e come hai cominciato e come sei arrivato a Freeligan.
I've of course been writing my entire life before I started to write role-playing games, and I started to write for a game called The Octoberland, a Swedish steampunk game in a Russian setting for about 12 or 15 years ago. And then some years ago, the Free League decided to publish that game in Swedish, and I just came along as a scenario writer. And then I wanted to write more, so I asked Thomas Härenstam at the Free League if they had anything else I could write for them. And he told me, "Do you have any ideas for Tales from the Loop?" Because they were just in the process of trying to find out what to do with the game, and they had some ideas, and I kind of wrote down my ideas and mailed him, and he liked it. So then I just started to write that game over a summer, and since then I've been writing a lot of stuff for them.
How did it take to write the first version of the rules?
It went really fast because I was writing maniacally, if you can say that, furiously for a summer. I just had all the ideas and I just had to get them down. So it went. The first version was really quickly done. But then, of course, we did a lot of editing and we tried out the rules and changed stuff and so forth. But the first version just bursted out.
Un'altra domanda che sicuramente vogliamo farti è questa: quale differenza c'è fra i giochi svedesi e quelli americani?
Well, that's a good question. I think many American games are like action movies, like Star Wars or I don't know, different shoot 'em up movies, and I think many Swedish games are more like an HBO series with drama, relationships, and some action, of course. But I would dare to say they have a little more mature content, Swedish games.
Abbiamo parlato di Tales from the Loop, un GDR con un'ambientazione e un immaginario molto particolari. Come presenteresti Tales from the Loop al pubblico italiano?
Well, the easiest answer is to say that it is somewhat like E.T. or Stranger Things, but it is actually an art book from the start, of course, by Simon Stålenhag. He published his amazing art first on the internet and then as a book. And somewhere in that process, they decided to make this role-playing game. And it's actually about kids. You play kids in the 80s who try to solve mystery, strange things. And I usually say that the game has two parts. One part is solving mysteries, finding odd things, encountering robots. And one part is everyday life, where your parents are in a divorce, you are bullied at school, you love someone that doesn't look at you. And some groups who play it, they play both parts. Some groups play mostly for the mysteries, and the groups I play with, we like the everyday life stuff best. So we have most scenes with anxiety and hardship and stuff. So I think you can do a little what you want with it.
In your opinion, and in the rule setting, the game is for children, playing children, or for adults, remembering their childhood and playing it?
I never imagined the game being played by children. I think it's a game for adults. But I mean, I'm glad if children want to play it, and I think many have that idea because you play kids should be playing it. But I don't know if kids of the day are that nostalgic over the 80s, and and I mean, looking back at those years is more interesting afterwards with the whole. I mean, it's a world about being a kid where I mean the original art, what I think it is doing very well is portraying how it is to be a kid. I mean, you have the everyday life and you have the imagination, and in the book it just melts together. I mean, of course there aren't dinosaurs where Simon Stålenhag grew up, but in the kid's imagination it's just they just exist in the landscape around him. And I think I have never seen anything portray childhood as good as he does. I think it's brilliant.
Allora, Thomas ci ha detto che il regolamento iniziale non è il regolamento poi definitivo, quello che è stato inserito e che poi sarebbe diventato il regolamento tipico dell'IP in pratica, quindi lo Mutant Year Zero. Ce ne racconti qualcosa? Come era fatto all'inizio? Perché è stato modificato? E come è stato cambiato Mutant Year Zero per match, per agganciarsi, per funzionare su Tales from the Loop?
There was another rules system in the early beginning of the game, but it was never developed into anything. It was my inspiration from, I know if you know the Forge movement and the Story Now games, those really story driven. Then Thomas told me they wanted the Year Zero engine, and I think that was a really good decision because it fits very well with the setting, and also the fact that the Year Zero system is so easily adapted to each setting. So it changed quite quickly into that rules system. I stripped some parts of it. I took away like the talents and other things, like the rules for fights. You can't really have a fight you can, but there are no really rules for it.
May we say that in a way it's more simple? I mean, there are few things that are peculiar in Tales from the Loop, or that have been simplified considering the Mutant Year Zero.
Yes, it's a smaller.
Yeah.
I've taken things away from it.
In a way, we can suggest to play. It's intended to be played by newbies, for example. It's a good entry point.
It could be. I think it's a good entry point, but also I in my groups we have played like all our lives, and when we played Year Zero, we never used some of the rules because we're so much into like dramatic scenes and long dialogues and stuff. So nobody bought the talents, and we didn't use the complicated rules and stuff. So I was just, I don't need this. So I think it's a what your preference is. I mean, you can have Year Zero in like Coriolis or Forbidden Lands, where it's a much more complicated version, or you can have Tales from the Loop that's almost no rules at all. And I prefer that. That's just the way I play.
Vorremmo chiederti una cosa. Quali sono le differenze fra il già conosciuto Tales from the Loop e invece Things from the Flood?
Yeah. They're actually part of the same universe, so they're really connected. I mean, Tales from the Loop is the 80s. It's kids just fooling around, finding strange stuff. In Things from the Flood, it's 10 years later, and the kids have turned into teenagers, and the world has become scarier and more difficult, and it is falling apart, kind of. So I think Things from the Flood is more Archive X, or it's more it's more dangerous. You can actually die, which you can't in Tales from the Loop. It's more of a horror game, Things from the Loop, and it's also more focused on even more anxiety, I would say. It's even more teenage anxiety. I mean, in his images, Simon, he has a lot of things growing out of machines, kind of exploding growth, uncomfortable pictures of flesh and stuff. And to me, that's a symbol for how, as a teenager, your body kind of grows, and it starts happening things that you don't like, and it's a very strong symbolic language, and that is a part of the game also, that life has become kind of hard and lethal and not that fun anymore. But basically, it's kind of the same rules, but another touch, another tone. I like things from the Flood. I like to play that more than I like to play Tales from the Loop, because I want to play stories with a little more horror in them.
Va bene, adesso però vogliamo sapere qualcosa di più, insomma, che cosa ci riserva il futuro di Tales from the Loop e Things from the Flood.
O su cosa stai lavorando per le prossime uscite.
Just recently, another of Free League's game was published that I wrote called Väsen, about Nordic horror. So that was the most recent thing, and it can actually be played not in the North. You can play it everywhere in the world. It's about folklore in the 19th century. So that was my latest game, and now I'm working on a secret project for the league I can't talk about, but I have some other things about to come out. I've written a campaign for the role-playing game Cult that will be taking place in Lebanon during the Lebanese civil war in the 80s. So I'm looking forward a lot to seeing that in print.
Ringraziamo tantissimo Nils per la sua disponibilità, per la sua gentilezza e per essere stato con noi questa sera.
È stata una bella chiacchierata, vi assicuriamo che non sarà l'ultima, ma su questo non possiamo dire altro. Vi ricordo come sempre di lasciare un bel mi piace sotto questo video e di iscrivervi soprattutto al nostro canale. Non sappiamo più come dirvelo. WyrdTV non si ferma qui, ci saranno tantissimi altri contenuti. Stay tuned. Grazie a tutti quanti e tutte quante.
Bye!
Bye. Bye.